Welcome, everyone, to another great episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. I'm here today with my brother and co-owner of SHEATH Underwear, Matt Humble.
Hey.
We are bringing back the podcast. As you've seen, we've had a couple podcasts. This is what kind of like reintroducing it. And as my partner, it's good to talk to him and see what's going on with him and get everyone caught up with what's going on with us and SHEATH. And today we're actually going to do a little something different. Thank you, Matt, for joining me today, Saturday morning. How you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
You have a good radio voice.
That's what I do.
Yeah, we've both been doing this for a while now, on and off, doing podcasts for a few years, and this is not our first rodeo, so I think We're both getting a little better at it.
Oh my God, I can remember back when you lived here at this house that I live at currently, we had a little podcast kind of set up and kind of like more like rock vocal microphones were our microphones, the Shure SM58s, I think they're called, and I can just remember this photo we took of us all kind of sitting around a table and having our first podcast ever. I think you had done some on your own. Honestly, I think you just kind of talked for an hour. Do you remember those? Like you didn't even have a guest. You just would talk for an hour. What was that one called?
It was called Mushroom Tea.
Yeah.
It was about, opening up the mind and just exploring the different ways to expand the mind, improve it, hone it, use it to the fullest capabilities.
Yep, I remember that. And oh man, that brings up a memory too of one time back in the day. One time you were on mushrooms and you texted me, "I'm going to Egypt." And I literally was also on mushrooms and I thought you were for real. Like it became like a panic in my mind. I was like, dude, Bobby's literally going to Egypt, dude. We gotta go stop him, dude.
Yeah, I was thinking about just like teleporting there through the mind. I was listening to an Alex Jones YouTube video about the Rosetta Stones and the secret knowledge within. So I was tripping while I was listening to that, and he was just talking about the pyramids and stuff. So I think that's the explanation for me going to Egypt.
That's awesome.
I would like to go.
Yeah, I'd love to go, but it's weird how when you get into those states of mind with using medicinal mushrooms, you can absolutely feel like you're there in a weird way, kind of like a closed eye lucid dream. You can kind of feel like, oh, I said I was going to Egypt and now I'm in Egypt. It's like you start to see pyramids and stuff in the geometries, all this like random stuff. I love when that happens.
Well, the only time I ever really transported somewhere, and it was right around that time, it was all very kind of vague, but I went to India. At least I do believe I was in India. And they wear those shawls, and they have really fancy fabrics over there. They're big on like fabrics, and it's kind of like see-through, like a veil. And I was kind of walking through all these veils that were kind of like sheets blocking a room, so you would like have to walk through these veils to get to the next room. And there was just some kind of nice old Indian lady stirring a pot of stew or something, and then that was it. And I came back, and it was just nothing special. Just I went to India instead of Egypt. I didn't quite make it there.
Wow. So you've been kind of using less of the medicines lately. What kind of keeps you busy and, like on top of your game, so to speak?
I have gotten way into the Wim Hof method of breathing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thought I was into it a while back, a couple of years ago when I first heard about it. I bought the program, but I couldn't really just sit down and do it. But now there's an app on your phone and it's super easy. And I really just do the like 5 or 6 rounds of the super deep breathing followed by holding your breath. And I added water, like drinking water. Anyways, it's kind of like a little adrenaline pump
Mm-hmm.
in the morning, uh, and that kind of gets me going. But I also actually did a micro dose, about a gram and a half of mushrooms, like a week ago.
Oh, how was that? I didn't hear about that.
It was great. It was much needed. It's been like at least I would 6 months probably since I've had any
Mm-hmm.
sort of psychedelic, and I like to get a refresher course from time to time.
Right.
Just
After you don't take it for so long, just a little bit kind of goes a long way. What were the general effects for you on this 1.5 gram micro journey?
just slowing down and and witnessing nature and
Mm-hmm.
life. The what is it? It's kind of cliche, but just staring at a tree and the bark and even the
Mm.
earth was.
The bark is like the tree's armor, you know? It's almost like, yeah, it's almost like the scales on a lizard or the scales on a snake. It's very high tech, you know? I know we just look at it like, oh, this is just a tree. This is just bark on a tree. We've been seeing it since we were born. There's a tendency to kind of overlook it or not really
Right.
think anything of it. But honestly, these are like highly advanced beings. Like that's something I definitely recognize on a psychedelic. So looking at trees, like whoa, all these systems within a tree are working to bring water from the ground up to the highest, tip of the last highest leaf that there is on the tree, and it's got armor because it doesn't, want to be, impacted or and also they're flexible. When storms come through, trees don't just break and fall over. I mean, on occasion they might, but most of them are like they'll sway with the winds, they'll dance with that wind energy, and just all of, I don't know, they're just advanced. They just know how to survive, and they just stay here for so long, hundreds of years, if not more sometimes.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a while. I think they perfected it. I'm
This is
looking at.
something I said on my podcast. Like, I think the humans are in the trees world, instead of, the trees are just this little like sideshow of the human game that we've got going on. I think that we're the guests and the real owners of this, planet, or maybe even universe, are plant life. So who
Hmm.
knows?
I would say that we share the space. Who was here first? Probably them.
But didn't we come out of them?
Yeah,
Like without them bringing transmuting oxygen, needing water, like it all had to line up in this like really crazy, like multi-million year bubbling of the primal cosmic ooze to like make a perfect environment for a living being like us.
the Goldilocks era.
Hmm.
They call it. It's just like the perfect temperature and the perfect,
Right.
conditions for existence. And well, I mean, I was thinking like last night, a fucking meteor could just strike Earth and throw us off its orbit and
Hmm.
really disrupt life as we know it.
Right. That's a weird part of nature too, is that we have protection against things that could fly and hit us from space. There's like these layers, ozone layers and stuff, that almost seems like someone put it there.
Jesus, I like to say Jesus put a protective layer around the earth. Or was it Buddha? No, but on it, like seriously, a little teaching moment. I was thinking that these rocks that are flying through space that are, destined to connect with Earth and knock us off its orbit were like literal rocks that you pick up off the ground, like a piece of
Mhm,
granite. That would be very difficult, I would imagine, to burn up in
mhm,
as it's flowing through our atmosphere in that relatively short period of time. But
mhm,
it's not granite. It's like ice. It's like ice and carbon, and it's all the it's like a conglomerate of particles or elements. But the fact that it's basically ice makes it like a lot
mhm,
easier to believe that it would burn up through the atmosphere before it even hits the earth, and it all happens like in a second, or
mhm,
few seconds. It made me feel better though about the potential impact of one of these floating, but it's like
mhm.
an iceberg. It's
Right.
not like a mountain of rock. It's a that's to me a significant difference in the
Oh, for
potential
sure.
throwing off us off the orbit.
Yeah.
So I felt a
Yeah.
little bit better.
It's probably a combination of stuff, but it's probably just space dust. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
space
no, yeah,
dust and ice and
absolutely.
yeah.
That was one of the terms they used. I mean, it was some sort of dust, space dust,
That
and it's
makes sense.
all
Yeah.
together, and that they're just floating around, and that's how somehow we were able to exist under these conditions. Like, I guess Earth was, I don't know how it all came together. That's why we
Hmm.
have like the things you can't explain through science is all kind of just God. Well, God did that part. The
Hmm.
very initial part is all explained through creator at
Right.
this point.
Or they say random chance, but
Yeah.
I don't really think random chance. I mean, it's weird. Like the level of randomness that it would have to occur for a
Mhm.
big bang or for whatever almost feels like there's got to be something like kind of behind that, even pushing it towards some happening, towards some evolution. So I don't know, like even if you figure out what the first thing is, well, what was before the first thing, and a lot of times when people think of God, they resonate with it's all that ever was, is, and will be. And that kind of makes sense to me because it's a container that things operate within, and it just kind of is. You can't really explain it, but it is. And some people believe that all of time has already happened and we're just kind of experiencing like a shockwave of it. In a weird way, that means we already have like a predetermined destiny. I know we have free will and we're able to help guide that destiny and help choose it, and that's like the brilliant part of being a human is we have the ability to change what we're focused on, what we're looking towards, or what we're trying to become. Whereas a lot of other animals are kind of just destined to do the whole procreation and unfortunately just kind of die and not like animals don't live on through the memories the way that humans like Martin Luther King or like someone did. I mean, some animals might. There's probably been great animals that are like legendary, but as far as like the story told, like there's not books about like this cat that lived and stuff the way that humans have this like way of actually shaping the world, whereas cats are and dogs kind of just like, oh, I'm here, take care of me.
Yeah, they exist within the confines of what is, whereas we can change what
Hmm.
is to what we want it to
I
be.
know that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, of
crazy to
course.
be a human, like that's why I kind of like really big it up and like try to let people know we're alive and you should do something because literally this is like such a, you said the other day on a phone call we had reminding me about the Gary Vee quote where he's like, hey, it's a trillion to one chance that you're here, like
Hmm.
stop wallowing around in misery and self-created suffering. Just be fully alive and do the things that whatever it takes, whatever you can discover to like remind yourself that you're fully alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that gets in the way of that is just life itself, and the toil that we go through to make our little nest or our nut for our retirement. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
set ourselves up, and a lot of time, like sometimes we don't give ourselves a break from that hustle, and
Mm-hmm.
that can really have a negative impact on the hustle. You need to like take a
Right.
break and regroup.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, I was just listening to his podcast. A buddy of mine, Michael Phillip, he has a podcast called Third Eye Drops, and I was just listening to one of his episodes recently, and he kind of talked about breaks being required so that you can kind of feel the difference between what like being totally on is and being off so that you get to the point that you miss being totally on. Because if you never miss this kind of like entrepreneurial lifestyle hustle thing that we kind of get addicted to in a weird way, because it's a very like rewarding path, especially when you are able to see your results coming in, and whether it be monetary or numbers wise or just whatever it is that you're going after and looking for results. um it's like you never know what you're missing unless you kind of step away for a sec. So I feel like, as I've gotten a little older, I'm 29 now, and I would say over the past like 3 to 4 years, I'm starting to be able to take like minute breaks from perceiving all of these like result based kind of goals that we have, so that when maybe Monday circles around, you've actually cleared some cache in your brain to be able to focus on problems in a bigger, better, more efficient way. Because if you're constantly debugging, you never get like a chance to like clear your cache. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good
To, to use computer terms, but
metaphor. Yeah, yeah, the going of life, and it's it's too much and it's not sustainable, and a lot of people try to sustain it through like meth or coke. It's like
mm-hmm,
I want to live today like it's my last, and then do it
right.
again tomorrow, and then the next day and the next day, and the soon I guess you realize, wait a minute, I'm gonna have it tomorrow. I should probably pace myself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And if I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm,
doing this for the rest of my life, I probably shouldn't try to do it all in one day.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's been my experience, but I also am older, 42. I keep forgetting that I'm 42. I was just gonna say 40. But and I've gone through that period in my life when I was 19 and wanting to not let the night end. And I used to partake in a lot more like recreational drugs, not so much like the
mm-hmm.
psychedelics, which I did also, but not for therapeutic value. It was more
Sure.
like recreation, but then the harder stuff, like then you lose the your value. Like the longer you stay awake, the less awake you really are, and
Mm-hmm,
you're kind of like in zombie mode, and that like what value are you really providing except this thrill of
mm-hmm,
feeling these chemicals running through your body, and they make you feel good, but that's false and it's fake, and like you're not going to have anything to show for it at the end of the day. Whereas now, kind of
mm-hmm,
what we do through Sheath and Time Wheel and creating our businesses in the shape that of our imagination, whatever we want, and
mm-hmm.
getting that fulfillment is it's totally different. It's not quite as thrilling and like a
You,
rush, but
right.
sometimes
But
it
the
is.
rewards are better,
Yeah, and
you
they're
know?
longer lasting. They're real.
I feel like there's no way we would have built this company to be where it's at today if we were addicted to hard drugs. It's just like that becomes your priority instead of building the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the business is my hard drug, actually.
Exactly. It becomes that kind of replacement. And I think people, yeah, that's such a great kind of concept, because that's something that people that like that have an issue like with drinking or smoking or doing drugs or whatever. They could have some other self-destructive issue. It has nothing to do with what you put in your body, but like they're looking for some release. They're looking for some like kind of like step outside of their normal frame of mind. And instead of like just kind of like doing this escape thing, you can actually build a life you don't need to escape from. And it's harder, and it takes more time and a lot more discipline and a lot more self awareness, and also self love, self appreciation, self care, because everyone looks at themselves as like their worst critic. For the most part, that's what I hear. But if you're able to get out of your own way, it's funny because we'll like love everything outside of ourselves and not love ourselves, and we're like we really need that, as a society. I think if people love themselves, I think people would be healthier, happier, more fit, more, like into their body and stuff. Because, we know a lot of people like with Sheath that are very into sculpting their body to be this suit of armor, to be this brilliant spectacle, pretty much, bodybuilders, weightlifters, and people just kind of keep fit. But a lot of people don't love their body enough to want to polish it the way that they'll polish their car or, their iPhone or whatever it is. So, and, I don't know. I've just been way more on a health and efficiency kick the past few years, having realized a couple of these things that I'm kicking around. I think it's good for people.
Yeah, I am not about material possessions for the most part because I have like some money, if you will, but like I still drive a relatively old car, and but I'm getting these NAD injections, IV injections, which nicotine. What I don't know what it's called. NAD. Google it, but it helps kind of stimulate and reinvigorate the mitochondrial
Mm-hmm.
parts of your cells, and it's supposed to increase energy overall and health, and sort of maybe even kind of act as a like a age. You're not going to age anymore or as
Mm-hmm.
fast or something. It kind of slows down the aging process. But
Yeah.
and I'm doing a lot of things like that to reverse the aging process. I don't think it's maybe going to happen. Maybe it will. Technology is advancing at rapid rates, and I know
Right.
Silicon Valley. I'm not the only one that wants to do this. I imagine there's a lot of super rich people really trying to crack the code of that, and
Mm-hmm.
every all the stuff that comes out on like Joe Rogan. I typically
Right.
try to guinea pig myself and see if it's working. Because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
if, let's say, they do come out with this age reversing technology, like how many people are going to get to do it before they're like, okay, we need to cut this program out. I want to be like one of the
Right.
first ones to get
I
it.
think it's going to be a matter of money because whatever it is, when it comes, when it gets here, it's going to be reserved for people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to put into their body, to put into themselves. And society is set up in a way that, most people are just struggling to put food on the table. So they're not going to be able to enjoy those things. That Altered Carbon is a Netflix show. You might have seen it. You might not have
Uh-uh.
watched it all, but you might have seen it
Okay.
advertised or something. But it's very much about this. In the future, science is able to pretty much find the you in your brain and put it into a new body. So you're never gone. You're all, if you break your leg and you're like, I can't live with this broken leg, like they'll put you in a new body. And it's weird because like that's something I'm sure people are looking for and looking try to do to like find that fundamental piece of you, that consciousness that is your like memory bank, that is like everything that the story that you tell yourself that who you are essentially. um yeah, like they're going to be able to either make this body that we're in, you know self regenerating to the point that it pretty much stays alive for longer and longer and longer, like hundreds of years, that type of thing. Or they'll take you out and just give you a brand new unit, more or less, and that unit might actually be artificial, so it kind of be a cyborg. But it's a weirder thing to think that it would be actually another person. It's
Mhm.
like a dead person, or like someone that was, their life was
Or
taken
a
for
clone.
you.
I would think it'd
Or
be
a
like,
clone. A
yeah.
clone's a good one, yeah. And I don't know, I also like Westworld. A lot of these shows are really kind of like hitting on what the future could be in a really like interesting way, and a lot of times those things come true, so we'll see.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
movies
it
are like
go
a
ahead.
preview. I mean, movies seem to be a preview of what is to come. I mean, a lot of the things that existed in our imagination that were turned into movies have since become reality. And so if that continues, then, Westworld or Altered Carbon are just, another
Hmm.
kind of preview of what's in the future,
Right.
hopefully.
Right. Yeah. And again, to get back to my original point, like it's gonna be expensive. You're not gonna be able to get a new body or, recreate your bone structure for cheap. And it would be amazing if that was at the top of the priorities of the world, and that's what like healthcare was, and we had free healthcare, but that's not the way it works. And honestly, there's overpopulation issues
Exactly.
already. So it's
Right.
kind of like do we want people to live forever? You know what I mean? Like, think about that. What if no one ever died? Like, how many people there would be? Like, death is a natural part of all this. So, but living your best life is also important. So, if you can, if you're, doing well for yourself and you're able to get some stem cells or some anti-aging for the now, for the next 60 years, which is still a ton of time. Um, it's like, why not? You've earned it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I had a weird kind of thought when you brought up altered carbon, and but like since forever, you've heard of like the fountain of youth, and I
hmm
imagine so that this issue of aging has been a concern over the millennia. But what like what if we could live forever? Like if it was an option, but you did have to work really hard. You had to become like super successful. I mean, I'm imagine the progress of individuals would be much more than it is today. People are kind of lazy and kind of just laissez-faire, and what it
hmm
let what is be, and just kind of play video games or whatever.
hmm
But when you had like this kind of goal future, like, oh, I'm gonna die if I don't really push myself to the limit, and still most people won't make it because only the top few thousand maybe will have access to this type of
hmm
treatments. And but I feel like it could really push human ingenuity and just overall desire to make progress. People, it's just some people in their mind
hmm
state is just like not that ambitious, it seems like. I
Right.
mean,
I think that it's a matter of DNA and also things that you were exposed to, especially early. You can get exposed to some great knowledge by the time you're 40. Like, let's say Think and Grow Rich. You could read it at 40 for the
right.
first time, and it might actually create like a restart within you, like a reshift of your priorities and what you want to do. But at the same time, you've had 40 years of living this way. And it's going to be like, well, I got this far without thinking and growing rich, so I might as well just take the lazy way and keep going that way. But if you're exposed to these things early, which you and I were, me in the teens and you in the 20s, I think, you're able to really like shift the way you're looking at reality as more of a malleable thing instead of this like very like hard and structured, thing that you can't have any wiggle room in. Because I can vividly remember a time when I was working at HEB, and all I could really think of was I would continue down the HEB career path because that was all I was like destined to be, all I was good enough to be, and all that the opportunity was open to me. I couldn't even like open my sights up to see a world of other careers. It was just like, oh, this is just what happened for me. I just lived next to a grocery store, and that's just the life that God gave me or whatever. But then you have a few experiences of especially working with other people, mentors, collaborators, artists, people who are doing things that you think you're capable of doing, and then you're able to kind of just like learn from them. I think mentors are incredibly powerful. I mean, I would say it's a cheat code for life because when you're able to learn how someone operates in the world by actually being with them. And a friend of mine actually said this on his podcast. He said, men learn from older men through direct experience. Like, nothing that dude is going to tell you can really nail it into you as to like opening up your sights as to what's possible. You have to experience it there with him. And I think we had a few of these experiences where we're in Las Vegas at the trade show, right? And I'm with you guys, and it's like, whoa, I can see what's possible. I'm literally here now. You can't argue with that. But if you had only told me the story, yeah, we went to a trade show, that doesn't open up in your mind. Oh, I could go to a trade show. It's like being there, having being of service to people older than you that maybe they need some of the skills that you have, and you're able to help them and they get something out of it too. It's a brilliant way to grow, and expand your horizons instead of just stay in this little box.
Yes. Yeah, we were exposed to those things, fortunately, somehow. I don't know. I think it was just through desire, like with the law of attraction, kind of. I wanted to be enlightened. I wanted success, and I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people want that though, and some people get the
But do they
knowledge.
really want it?
Right. I don't know.
Like they might think I want it. You don't do anything though. If you have to take action. That's how bad you have to want it. It's like, okay, if I want it, what do I do? Not just I want it, you know?
Yes. Something was making me think of the Eleusinian mysteries. I don't know if,
Mm-hmm.
like,
I love
that,
those.
yeah. Do can you elaborate on that?
Sure. From what I know about them, and I haven't read any books per se, but I've heard on podcasts and shows, and I've done some reading like on Wikipedia and, just kind of general information. But from what I do know about the Eleusinian mysteries, it was kind of this gathering that would take place on a yearly basis or once every 4 years, one or the other. And all these big time kind of thinkers and visionaries of the ancient Greek paradigm that used to be Socrates,
Plato,
Plato,
Aristotle.
yeah, like all these kind of like people that would go on and create systems that we still use today would go to this festival more or less and trip balls. They would be drinking, yes, a tea called the kykeon, which a lot of people think had mushrooms in it, or potentially LSA, which is what LSD comes from, which is a fungus that grows on rye called ergot, and that's actually what LSD was synthesized from, was ergot. And LSA is a very similar psychoactive compound, but you don't have to extract it though. It's there, and it's not quite LSD. It's got some actually negative side effects for the body, in that it gives you kind of like locked fingers and toes, and some kind of some unfavorable effects, but you still trip balls in the very same way you would on LSD. Um, but yeah, mushrooms seem to be much more of a potential potion ingredient, I would say, that because it doesn't have negative side effects almost at all, unless you take way too much of it, and then you're gonna be crazy for like 3 days or whatever. But yeah, these guys would responsibly, I would hope, ingest these psychedelics and have communal experiences of the divine, and then go back to their jobs, inspired, and create world changing structures, brilliant art, incredible philosophy, mathematics, the alphabet, all the stuff that we use today. It all
Hmm.
came from this kind of, eh, you know, uh, esoteric experience that people would have collectively. And I think it still goes on today. I do. I think there's probably secret Eleusinian mysteries still going on today. And in fact, I guess, this one's not a secret, but I'd say the closest thing to it is Burning Man today.
Mm. Well, real quick, I wanted to let the audience know that if they would like to hear more about this type of subject matter, they could listen to your podcast, the Xian Archive. Where is that available?
Hmm. Yeah, it's going to be on Apple Podcasts once it's launched. I'm currently in the first season, recording the first season, and I'm doing it in a way that I kind of write albums, because I don't know, I just kind of like writing long format stuff. And I guess this isn't technically writing because it's not music, but I am looking at it as a production, in the sense of like, hey, this is going to be a ten piece body of work. So I'm trying to gather 10 podcasts. I'm several in. I'm not quite all the way done yet, but I've been editing, and I'm going to release it as kind of a podcast album. There's going to be 10 podcasts on it with different people that I find interesting, more or less. It's kind of like visionaries, thinkers, artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, and that type of thing. People that, are able to kind of chat about these kind of more psychedelic and spiritual angles of viewing reality. And I want to learn from these people too, because I look up to them, and it's not just about, me kind of becoming like this like guy who presents information. I'm learning on this podcast. So I think it's really cool. But yeah, it's called Xian Archive, Xian Archive. And yeah, you can find it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It should eventually find its way there.
Oh shit, that was a very interesting little sidebar about psychedelics. It seems to be very prevalent in
Hmm.
our existence, but as compared to other people, like some people have never done it.
I know but you're from Colorado, and in Denver, mushrooms are decriminalized. Like that is a huge and massive shift from the war on drugs.
Yeah, and we're very progressive here, and it's
Hmm.
a great state. I mean, it's one of the better states to live in, as my experience would tell. It's just very peaceful, not a whole lot of riots
Hmm.
happening in the current environment, which I think perhaps psychedelics could help, and
Yeah,
maybe a combo of mushrooms and MDMA for some of the people that have
yeah.
experienced some serious trauma. Um,
Right. I heard this on a podcast the other day. That for people who are actually nervous to try anything like ayahuasca or like LSD or even mushrooms, that MDMA would be an ideal kind of precursor experience to let you know what an altered state is like, and that it's not going to really be scary, but it's a very gentle way to get you kind of prepared for what an actual psychedelic experience would be like, which is a 4 to 6 hour, in most cases, visionary experience where your eyes, the things that you physically see with your eyes, become very highly detailed, and you get a deeper sense of space in your perception. You kind of can see air in a weird way. Like it's not that you see air, but you see this energy that is fulfilling every void. And you're able to see the ether that we are all literally part of, and it connects us all. And that's like where that kind of like oneness experience, I think, starts. There's a field that pervades like between everything. And in that field is the field of consciousness, the field of reality, the things we're able to perceive and be. So your eyes literally start seeing these things. You're not making this stuff up in your mind and just like having wild thoughts. You're seeing it. Um, and I think that's very informative because our eyes are capable of seeing a lot more than we think. And it's also blending a bit with the mind and the subconscious. Your subconscious starts to become visible into the conscious world, the things you're seeing with your eyes. So there's two different levels to it. I think one is actually increasing your eyesight, and its ability to see things in a sense of information. You're able to see more information with your brain through your eyes, but also the subconscious kind of weaving its way in there allows you to see deeper metaphorical, allegorical insights that kind of blow you away, to be quite honest. Like very, very revelatory thoughts come pretty quick once you start sitting in that deep shaman trance, that state where you're fully immersed in the visionary without these like little egoic attachments that we have that try to make us seem in the right. And you're able to just see the raw kind of data of the information or the experience that you're recalling. And you can honestly say, a lot of times on psychedelics, I've looked at something and said, I didn't do that right. I didn't handle that right. I didn't go about that the right way.
mhm.
And of course, you can't change those things sometimes. If you can rectify and create, what's it called? Resolution, or, when you get back on the same page with somebody, you can try to do that, but it's not always going to be possible. And if that is the case, it's just a learning experience. You have to forgive that person and forgive yourself in those circumstances, or whatever happened, so, but like so many people have such massive barriers up that they'll almost never get to that place. And psychedelics are really great at like getting those barriers down. And it's something that monks work for 3-4 years meditating, every day, trying to get their barrier down to finally kind of see reality. And psychedelics will do it in 2 hours.
Everybody couldn't do that though. We couldn't all sit around and meditate for 4 years, but
Right.
it is
That's
good
why
that
these are
we.
great.
Well, it's good. Well, right, because it's kind of like a fast crash course, I guess, to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is good that we have people that spend their life trying to find enlightenment, and we have other people that are very like they don't even focus on that at all, and they're just trying to be productive and make stuff and help society.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
there I okay, so backtracking to what you were talking about as far as like being able to look back on your life if it's you're
Mm-hmm.
later in life and you take mushrooms, and can kind of help you come to accept your death ultimately. And
Mm-hmm.
like I've heard of studies where people like that have cancer, they take mushrooms and they accept their fate and kind of come to peace with that, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm I know that a couple of years ago I had this spot on the top of my mouth that wouldn't go
Mm-hmm.
away, and the dentist like made a big deal about it and called in another dentist, and then they're like, this is not normal and we need to take a biopsy. And so a
Mm-hmm.
biopsy, if you don't know, is when they cut out a piece of your body and send it into the lab and see
Oh, wow.
what it is. And I didn't know what it was until that day, but they cut out this spot on the top of my mouth. And so for 2 weeks, I didn't know what it was. And if you Google it, it's scary. You're like, holy shit, I might have cancer, I might die or whatever. And
Mm.
it's like right next to my brain. It's just like freaked
Mm-hmm.
out. So I took mushrooms, and a lot of people probably wouldn't think to do that, but because it might freak you out more.
Mm-hmm.
But I took them, and I saw myself like dying slowly. It was like this time lapse picture of my body decaying, going from
Oh,
where I
wow.
was to just like my muscles deteriorating to getting some like my
Mm-hmm.
bones. And it was really weird, and I cried. It was weird. Like I accepted
Yeah.
my death. I was like, I guess
Right.
this is what it is. And it sucked because I had so much potential, and I was doing, you know, I was on my way
Mm-hmm.
to making Sheath successful.
Right.
And but then you can appreciate when you don't die, and maybe you
Right.
can live your life a little bit more.
That reminds me of the Fight Club situation where Brad Pitt's character is kind of like, so the saying is, only after disaster can we be resurrected. It's only after you've lost everything that you're free to do anything. That's crazy. So, once you've lost everything, you're free to do anything. That's very true. That reminds me of that. And because once you get the actual sense of what dying feels like and is, and it's going to be a cease of being. And then when you come back from that and realize that they're still happening, it's so much more special because you're like, oh, I can still make that painting or still make an album or still create a company or still have a good relationship with my mom or whoever. You know what I mean? It's like you can still kind of tend to those things because you didn't die. Until you know what dying is, it's hard for you to even perceive life in a special way because you're just so used to it and honestly taking it for granted. A lot of us take it for granted, and probably I do on many occasions. So it's just like it's this freaking really special thing. And like conversations like this help me remember and stay attuned to that, and that's why I like them and like producing podcasts and listening to people who talk about this stuff. And I also like to talk about it myself. That's why I started a podcast. And I've been on podcasts in the past, and Time Wheel has had a number of kind of little shows that we've done. But now I feel like it's going to be into a better place as far as like what I know its goal is, which is to just do that. It's just to talk about these things and keep that thread going, learn some stuff, and and have some relationships and communication and that type. Well, no, to have some friendships come out of it too. So
Yeah, that's what I've always loved about podcasts is the conversations that ensue because for whatever reason on a day-to-day basis we don't get this deep into topics
right.
on a yeah just TV's on, phones ringing,
Hmm.
work's being done. We don't stop and take time to contemplate and philosophize. I love philosophy and I
Hmm.
love just that, expanding the mind or asking questions like Socrates, and it's like, why are we here? And what are we doing here? And
Hmm.
there was a good documentary on ESPN recently. Actually, it wasn't that good, to be honest, but it was about Bruce Lee and his life and his achievements in the short period of time. And he was a philosophy major. And I harp on martial arts all the time and I don't even practice them. But I know, I mean, I kind of do, but like I should do more. But I just I see the value and I see the people who do it in their lives and they're full. They're, balanced. You're
Right.
not just doing work, you're using your body as art. And then from
Yep.
that comes some knowledge. It seems like some sort of awareness of
Oh
potential.
yeah. I think I know what it is. First of all, this is awesome because it's an ongoing thread through all your podcasts, and what it is the flow state. Martial arts is able to help you access the flow state. Yoga, same. Meditation,
Mm,
same.
yes.
Breath work, same.
Yeah.
Psychedelics, same. They're all getting you into flow states. And people who get into flow states on a regular basis end up doing dope shit. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. And that is Bruce Lee.
Dude.
Anyone who practices martial arts. And
Yeah.
I don't do martial arts, but I find my flow state through breath work and meditation.
And you do
And
yoga, which is a
yeah,
body movement,
right,
with breathing and stuff. So yeah.
right, right. There's different types of yoga. I actually recently went back and uh, the gyms reopened from quarantine, and I
Beautiful.
went.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
they
went.
are. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to a yoga class here, walking distance from my house, which was great. It was very feminine based, kind of Ashtanga with a little bit of like flow movement involved, but I liked it. I think I was one of two guys, and there was like 12 girls, so I felt a little silly in some of the poses, but I definitely walked out feeling great and got nice stretches throughout all my body and stuff. But oh, I had another point. The other point, I think, when you talked about the flow states, also bringing a deeper sense of awareness in the people, I think that our body itself has these kind of like codes in them. DNA, you could think of it like that, or mitochondria, and these codes release certain like information for us to kind of become aware of, and unless you move your body, the codes stay dormant. So as you're doing martial arts or qigong or yoga, and you're moving all these parts of your body and getting into these weird nitty gritty muscles that you almost never activate, these little like codes are being released, and it's hard to describe. It kind of sounds airy fairy. I get that, but it's like um, it's just like dormant cells being activated and coming online, and then your body as a whole starts to operate on a fuller level. That's at least something I feel like I've heard and I've experienced as well through like
Well,
using all these technologies.
I technologies. Um, I think that it doesn't happen like the flow state doesn't happen like when you're first learning martial arts. It happens after you've been doing it for, let's say, a year or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been doing the same motions over and over, and it's kind of like driving from work to home that same way every day for years. And sometimes you arrive home and you're like, you wake up and you're like, holy shit, I just went into some kind of weird zone. And you go into those zones mostly through, it's when your body kind of takes over, the muscle memory takes over, and
Mm-hmm.
your mind is able to be free, I guess. But it is unlocking those codes at the same time, and maybe like codes meaning like chemicals being released in your body that
Mm-hmm.
trigger that state. But
Yep.
it just doesn't happen until you get really good at it, like Michael Jordan or basketball. That they are also that's another sport where you see the
Right.
flow state occur more often, unlike baseball or football, probably because I
Right.
mean, maybe that happens, but the sequences are very short on
Right.
those sports. Whereas like maybe tennis or basketball, you can
Mm-hmm.
really get into it and just I can get into it. I can slip away because I've been doing it for so long. Basketball, that is, and yoga. Like yoga, I'll
Mm-hmm.
be doing a asana or something, and I'll wake up a few minutes later. I'm like, holy shit! It's just totally basically daydreaming in some
Right.
some instances, but it's just a good feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to talk about this one real quick. Actually, I wanted to say earlier, as in other activities that can flow state you or help you get into a flow state. I was remembering, and it's something I miss: mountain biking.
Oh
I
wow,
really miss it. I used to do it a lot, but we had like trails over here.
dude, we have trails
Um,
over here for days.
See, I think we need to get back into that, dude,
Yeah.
because you get into a flow state on a bike. It's great. It's healthy. You're out getting sun. You're getting fresh air. Um, it's maybe not the same level of exercise of going on like a run for the same amount of miles, but it's fun. And I can vividly remember right now, like going down the trails and dodging rocks and taking little leaps and jumps and like these little just kind of things that activate a flow state. So mountain bikes too.
Yeah, like
And I think
running though.
any
When you said running,
Mhm.
that just brought me back because I used to run all the time, and
Yeah, I remember
people that
that.
people that do run, they are usually more overachievers than someone who doesn't run, probably. I
Running's
mean,
tough.
not, I
Yeah.
mean, just working out, but like as opposed to somebody that runs versus somebody that does not exercise at all. The
Right.
person that runs is probably going to be like way more successful on average.
Like David Goggins.
Yeah,
It's
he's
like all he does is run. It's not like he made, like a tech company like Facebook. All he does is run and stay fit and just talk about it,
yeah, he
and like
motivates
people
so
respect him
much.
on a new level.
Yeah, he's an
Mhm.
amazing character.
Right. Like you don't feel you have to make like the next Facebook or the next, giant massive software company or whatever. I feel like you just tap into what you do, what you love, and just take that to, as far as you can take it. And I
Maybe
don't know,
that's
it's
working as a
worth it.
steel mill. I mean, I feel like everyone has their place, and we're all, you have in ancient cultures the peasants and the slaves and
Hmm.
maybe some middle class and upper class people, and as long as they're happy, if they're living in squalor, if you're living in a tent in the middle of wherever,
Hmm.
if you got water and food and family, and you're laughing,
You're good to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
because no matter how much money you have, like it's all going to come back down to those moments with like the people close to you.
Right. Right. Yeah. I want to tie that in with the idea of lastly, the idea of psychedelics, which allows you to actually get a glimpse of that before it's too late in a weird way.
Yeah.
And even MDMA, which I've been doing research on, especially following MAPS, multiple disciplinary association for psychedelic studies. they are doing a lot of studies with MDMA that find it to be one of the most effective psychedelics. And also, a lot of people have this idea that ecstasy or MDMA like does some like really bad damage to your brain, essentially.
Well, there's
Um,
just to elaborate on that, I guess whatever
yeah.
is it can cause depression. I think that's the main
Hmm.
stigma that it causes because the serotonin levels get depleted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to touch on that because I've been doing some research on it, which is more attributed to people staying out late, dehydrating, sleep deprivationizing
Right.
themselves on top of a chemical. And that is actually what brings your serotonin to a massive kind of lower level,
Hmm.
was more like the activities and what you were doing during the experience. Anyway, a lot of these negative side effects are coming from a few factors, which is one, other substances being present in the pill if you're taking a pill.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, it should be MDMA and MDMA only, not some pill, because the pill could have caffeine in it and a lot of caffeine. And I'm talking 200 to 300 milligrams. And that's like drinking two monsters, right? It could have amphetamines in it. It could have even worse stuff in it.
Heroin.
All kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take MDMA, and you're also taking all of those other things I just mentioned, of course your brain is gonna like feel like shit the next day or whatever it is. Especially if you're dehydrated, out dancing in the hot club, pretty much with a fever because your body temperature goes up under the effect of MDMA.
I want to interject, well, real quick, just hold that
Yeah.
thought, because it's funny, because I only had a couple of experiences and I never really did
Hmm.
pure MDMA. But the one
Hmm.
time I did what I felt was probably the best version of that on a street
Hmm.
level. It had like a little apple in it. It was pink, and I was at the
Hmm.
club, and I remember I like stood up and threw my arms in the air like I just won the championship, some sort. And then the night started getting really good, but the club closed and we had to go to an after party. And on the way there, I
Hmm.
was riding with this odd fellow, and
Hmm.
he we had the Vicks vapor rub little nasal inhalers, and he turned on the heater really hot in the car, and like I just remember that being a factor in the way we felt as far as
Hmm.
the experience of it.
Yep.
And I don't know where I was going with that. I just wanted to add, like, that was my one experience, and I remember him like
Hmm.
blowing the heater on,
Hmm.
and why
Yeah,
that was
you
a
get
thing.
you get extra sensitive to temperature
Yeah.
um under the effect of this, and it's honestly to be viewed as a medicine, not a club drug.
Hmm.
Just the fact that people take a medicine and go and do reckless things with it doesn't make that medicine bad. That makes the people doing reckless things, giving it a bad name, bad. You know what I mean? It's actually highly, highly, highly effective at treating some of the biggest things that plague us as a society, from depression to anxiety to PTSD to
Trauma.
people that have trauma. Yeah. So
Yeah, trauma.
if you look at this thing like a medicine and not a drug, it changes the way that you want to work with it. Because, it's like, who wants to take 9 aspirin and go to the club and dance? You're going to feel like shit the next day. Instead, it's like you need to really cultivate an environment where you're relatively still. You're like not moving around. And if you are, it's very minimal. You want control of the temperature. You don't want to be going in and out, and especially not be sweating. You don't want to drink too much water, but you need to stay hydrated too because it does elevate your body temperature. But essentially, what you should be doing is going inwards, closing your eyes, unfolding and unpacking memories, and having the experience of being a kind of higher version, better version of the you that you think of as yourself. Because the chemicals that are released, serotonin, allow you to pretty much not feel anything negative. Like for the 4 hours, it's pretty much going to be positive, and you're able to see how you can hold a state of positivity for several hours. And then, say you start to come back and you hear that first like negative thought in your head. You're like, what the fuck was that? I I was just thinking on cloud 10 for 4 hours straight. What is this bullshit complaint that just came across my mind, right? But now you're aware of it. But now you're able to say, "Oh, I dismissed that thought." Previous, we just think that's what's reality. So like using this as a guide to training your mind to veer towards the positive aspects of living and being alive, that is exactly what getting rid of depression is, and that is exactly what this is proven to do. So that's my spiel on that. Don't abuse it, don't take it too often. Do your research, arrowhead.org. But if anyone out there is struggling, like, this medicine is there to help. And I'm the last person I ever thought would be delivering this message, because I grew up thinking that this shit was the worst thing you could ever do, you know? But
Yeah, because that's what we're
times are
told.
changing.
Hmm. The lies, the veil is being lifted. Transparency.
Hmm.
Yeah, the truth is
It's about how you use
out
it,
there.
If you use it, go inward in a very like clean, beautiful environment. Um, you're going to have, of course, a good experience either way, probably, but you're going to have minimal side effects than going to the club and bouncing around the streets and sweating and drinking alcohol and all that stuff. You should not be drinking on this stuff.
No.
Everyone's like thinking like it does these bad things to your brain, and it's everything around MDMA that people do that does it, not
Yeah. I mean,
it.
even me,
You know what I mean?
I blame it partially for some of my depression after that period in my life, but I also, you know, got arrested. I was doing multiple other drugs simultaneously, not taking care of myself at all for like a year. And,
Mhm.
the one thing that I blame, I guess, was the MDMA because it lifted me up so high, I guess, is in my frame of thought is what goes up must come down. And, the
Mhm.
waves, ups and downs of life. So the higher you go, sometimes the lower the fall. So that was my thinking. But
And again, as I was just saying, I think a lot of that has to do with sleep deprivation and no
mhm.
nutrients and not drinking, like a nice smoothie the next day and really taking care of yourself and all this and that. But I will say, if it does happen, that's where self love, what MDMA is really good at showing you, comes into play, where you pick yourself up and you say, I'm going to do something positive today anyway, even though I feel like shit. You know what I mean?
It is out there, and that's like, I mean, it's all like basically about having a positive attitude and, um, trying to keep maintain that. Ultimately, that's, I mean, we're like, the reason we do those types of substances is to get the most out of life for them. Trying to learn the Eleusinian mysteries at our house and be one of those great men. I think we want to both be great men and teach and help others become great men and make the world great again.
Hmm. Hmm.
I love having these conversations.
Yeah,
I feel like we should probably go
me
get
too.
out
Yeah.
and,
This has
and,
been crazy.
and do some great things. I
Hmm.
know I have some packs to fill. SHEATHunderwear.com. Go get you some.
Nice.
Yeah. Um, you got anything you want to share with the world before we?
I do feel like it might be relevant to the people that listen, that go to the festivals and conscious events, and the type of people that we've been surrounding ourselves with, because they might already be familiar with these medicines, or um, be learning about them from a hopefully kind of more neutral standpoint, because a lot of what's out there is kind of like that negative propaganda stuff. But always do your own research. Do a lot of research before you do
Or talk
anything.
to
Don't
people that
just
have done
take.
it themselves
Yeah,
and
yeah, and know your source and know your dose and all that on both of those, on any substance you ever take. Know your source and know your dose. You don't want to be taking some random amount. it could be way more than you need. You don't want to be taking.
Lower is better. Less is more sometimes, in my opinion. It's the people that look inward and push themselves that are successful, not the people that blame their external environment for their failures. Obviously, that's typically how it goes. So if you're not looking in and you want to be successful, look inward. And it might take some of these psychedelics to get deeper, but you can also do it through meditation and yoga, breath work, running, martial arts. So go inward, find yourself, find your passion, and share that with the world.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'd say at the very least, people should try to meditate at least once a week for 20 minutes. And, if you love it, dial it up, 3 times, 5 times, 7 times a week. But 20 minutes of sitting down in silence, it seems such a hard thing to do and to carve out from your busy schedule, but it is so worth it. And meditation is a very subtle energy shift. You're not going to open your eyes and all of a sudden something miraculous is different. It's going to be in those few hours unfolding after the meditation where you start to see, oh, I'm kind of more calm. I'm kind of more like accepting than I was yesterday. And then you meditate again and again and again, and that effect just kind of grows. So I don't know. I recommend people at least meditate. And then, if anything calls you, do a lot of research and really take it seriously. Take it like a ceremony or a visit to your psychiatrist, not necessarily a party.
Right.
So,
Jinx.
with any of these things.
Yeah.
Don't treat it like a party. But thanks for having me. And people can find more from me on xianarchive.com. My Instagram, Xian Archive, XIAN Archive, and then on Apple Podcasts, just the same thing, Xian Archive. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Killing it. Killing the game. We're stepping it up. We've come a long way. Started from the bottom. Now we're here. I'm very grateful and blessed. And it's still just the beginning, but it's kind of like, a little bit into the beginning, but we've got a long way to go still. So let's keep this journey moving forward.
Sure.
Have a great day. Thank you everyone for listening. Of course, go to sheathunderwear.com. Get yourself a pair. Check out Time Wheeled. It's got a lot of great content related to music and other ideas, I think. So
yeah, timewheel.net. That's our label, collective, and media platform that we just like to curate dope stuff and put it out there for the world to enjoy. So yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.